Is tap water safe to drink, or is bottled water safer? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Sam Ellman. I'm a sustainability chemist with specialties in biodegradable materials and environmental toxicology, and today I'll be taking a question from Reddit user Binders4588 who asks, Drinking water. Is tap water better than bottled? What's the best way to get drinking water with the least amount of harm? I lived in a developing country as a Peace Corps volunteer, and after that experience came back to the US with such an appreciation for our quote-unquote clean tap water. But after Flint and the rising studies on microplastics, drugs, etc. in tap water, I'm again back to thinking my daily water intake from the tap is going to slowly give me cancer or other issues. If you live in the developed world, then your tap water is almost certainly safe to drink. Even if your local waterways are contaminated, your local water utility is required by law to ensure the water is clean by the time it reaches your tap. In the US, each state audits every water utility in the state once per year to make sure water quality remains where it should be. Here's how to check for your local water quality report. The most common name for the water quality report is the Water Consumer Confidence Report. So to find it, just look up your local area along with those words. So let's pretend I live in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'll look up Little Rock Water Consumer Confidence Report. So here we've got the Consumer Confidence Reports for the state of Arkansas. We go here. And then Little Rock is in Pulaski County. So we'll go down to Pulaski County. And we've got the year 2024. We'll search. And here are all of the water utilities in Pulaski County. Here's the one for Little Rock, so we'll click on that. And now we've got the 2024 Water Quality Report. This first page is all about what goes into the report and how to read it, so I'd highly recommend reading your own for your local area. But then when we scroll down to the data, we see these tables that might look a little bit scary, but there's not a whole lot that you need to look for. For example, one of the main things you want to look for is violation. So violation is just letting you know, is there too much of whatever this chemical is in the water? No, N is for no, it's not too much in the water. Y is for yes, it is too much in the water. So here, in these three categories, no, 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 not too much in the water, so we're safe. Same thing here, no, no, no. For minor contaminants like lead and copper, which are very important to check for, they don't show the violation in this case, but you can go over here, which says the 90th percentile result. So that means that the highest results that they had in the multiple tests they run were this number, less than 0.001. And action level, which is the minimum amount that needs to be detected for action to be taken, is 0.015. This is much higher than our less than 0.001, so we can say that in the Little Rock water, there's not too much lead in there. Same thing for copper. 0.054 is less than 1.3, so we're safe. Nothing to be concerned about. We can keep scrolling down and we see a whole bunch of no, 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 no. So your water quality report might look a little bit different from this, but generally you should be looking for the same kinds of things, and it should read pretty similarly. It's just that each state and each water utility will format the document a little bit differently. Considering how much water is used every day, contamination is very rare. Contamination only happens if a whole lot of people made mistakes all along the line, and that can happen for both tap water and bottled water. Here's an example. In 2024, Fiji Water needed to recall nearly 2 million bottles of water because of contamination with manganese and bacteria. As you can see in this news article, 78,000 cases were recalled, and each case had 24 bottles, so that's 1.9 million bottles of Fiji water recalled because someone made a mistake and didn't check the water to make sure it was clean before it left the factory. Water quality mistakes happen occasionally for both tap and bottled water, so drinking exclusively bottled water doesn't guarantee you'll be safer, it only guarantees you'll spend more money. The Flint water crisis makes me sad for a lot of reasons. It hurt a lot of people, particularly children, because children are more sensitive to lead than adults. And it also convinced a lot of people not to trust their tap water, which is causing them to waste their hard-earned money on things they don't need, like bottled water, rather than saving it for things they need more. The Flint water crisis was tragic, and so stupid. The crisis was caused because the city of Flint decided to switch their water source over from Lake Huron to the Flint River, and the Flint River is a little bit more acidic than Lake Huron. That isn't necessarily a problem in its own right, A lot of people, when they hear the word acid, they think of things in movies where acid burns through the floor, but acid comes in many different levels. So, for example, our sense of taste is able to taste acid. Acid tastes sour to us. So anything that tastes sour has some acid. Things like lemon juice, coffee, sour candy, all of those are a little bit acidic, and that's totally fine, not a hazard to our health. Even though the slightly sour Flint River water would have been totally safe to drink, it still caused a problem. Flint is an old town full of old pipes made of lead. Those lead pipes lead underground and through people's homes. Lead is toxic, so this was always a ticking time bomb, and the slightly acidic water set it off. The lead pipes hadn't been a serious problem prior to the water source switch, because lead doesn't dissolve very well in non-acidic water. However, after the switch to the slightly acidic Flint River water, lead was pulled out of the lead pipes and into the water that people drank. There were so many opportunities to avoid the Flint water crisis. If all of the 100-year-old lead pipes in Flint had been replaced, then the crisis would have never happened. If the Flint River water had been tested for acid before switching over to it, the crisis would have never happened. If the water in the Flint River had been tested and then neutralized for acid before being put into those lead pipes, the crisis would have never happened. Water contamination in the tap or the bottle is caused by people irresponsibly cutting corners. If Fiji Water had properly tested their water before sending it out, then there wouldn't have been a recall. If the city of Flint had properly tested the Flint River before using it, then there wouldn't have been the Flint water crisis. Our water is totally safe so long as no idiots in charge decide to skip safety checks. If you're afraid your home might be old enough to have lead pipes, or if you get your water from a well and you want to make sure it's safe to drink, you can send your water out to get tested. Every state in the US has certified water testing labs where you can send your tap water and get back results for $100 to $200. That might sound expensive, but if your water comes back clean after getting tested once, you never have to buy bottled water again. Here's how to find a water testing lab in your area. We'll keep pretending I live in Little Rock, so we'll look up Get My Water Tested Little Rock. And if we scroll down, we'll see these costs and instructions for water testing. So this is a short list of some things they can test for, but if you go to the full list, then you fill out this form, and there are all these different things you can get it tested for. These are a lot of different categories, and you probably don't need it tested for all of these, but even if you did, this is only a couple $100, maybe $300 total if you did absolutely everything, including every possible chemical, every possible bacterium, and all of that. These lower ones are looking for specific sort of packages for specific goals you might have. So maybe if you're using it for an irrigation system, you might want to check if it has certain things in it that might affect your crops. Same things for livestock. And actually here, there's even one for domestic, which is a home. So here you'd test for everything that you might care about being in your home's tap water. Very easy. And every state has this. There are a whole lot of labs that you can find that you can get this kind of information from. If you want, although it isn't necessary for most people, you can also put a filter on your tap. For example, I know some people who know that their tap water is totally safe, but their tap water tastes a little funky, so they use a filter to make it so that their tap water tastes better. That's totally fine, and if you want to use a tap filter, you can do that. Just remember to follow the instructions on the box and replace the filter when it says to replace it, because if the filters remain in there too long, they can get moldy, and you don't want mold in your tap water. If you'd like to see more of this, I post scripts of all my videos a few months ahead of time on my free blog. The link is in the description. If you found this helpful, I'd like to mention that it's a hard time to be a scientist in the US. I'm unemployed! So if you'd like to support my work by sending me a few bucks directly through PayPal, the link to that is also in the description. Remember, science only exists thanks to the collective labor of generations of human history, so the fruits of that labor belong to all of us. Science isn't just for scientists. Science is for everyone, which means science is for you. I'm terrible at chugging things.